If I stay, 3:47 p.m., chapter 6. They just moved me out of the recovery room into the trauma intensive care unit or ICU. It's a horseshoe shaped room with about a dozen beds and a cadre of nurses who constantly bustle around reading the computer printouts that churn out from the feet of our beds, recording our vital signs. In the middle of the room are more computers and big desks where another nurse sits. I have two nurses who check in on me, along with the endless round of doctors. One is taciturn Duffy man with blonde hair and a mustache, who I don't much like, and the other is a woman with skin so black it's blue and a lilt in her voice. She calls me sweetheart and perpetually straightens the blankets around me, even though it's not like I am kicking them off. There are so many tubes attached to me that I cannot count them all. One down my throat, breathing for me. One down my nose, keeping my stomach empty. One in my vein, hydrating me. One in my bladder, peeing for me. Several on my chest, recording my heartbeat. Another on my finger, recording my pulse. The ventilator that's doing my breathing has soothing rhythm like a metronome. In, out, in, out. No one aside from the doctors and nurses and social worker has been in to see me. It's the social worker who speaks to Gran and Gramps in her sympathetic tones. She tells them that I am in grave condition. I am not entirely sure what that means. Grave? On TV, patients are always critical or stable. Grave sounds bad. Grave is where you go when things don't work out here. I wish there was something we could do, Gran says. I feel so useless just waiting. I will see if I can get you in to see her in a little while, the social worker says. She has frizzy gray hair and a coffee stain on her blouse. Her face is kind. She is still sedated from the surgery and she's on the ventilator to help her breathe while her body heals from the trauma. But it can be helpful even for a patient in comatose state to hear from their loved ones. Gramps grunts in reply. Do you have any people you can call? The social worker asks. Relatives who might like to be here with you. I understand this might be a quite trial for you, but the stronger you can be, the more will help me out. I startle when I hear the social worker say my name. It's just a jarring reminder that it's me they're talking about. Grant tells her about the various people who are en route right now. Aunts, uncles. I don't hear any mention of Adam. Adam is the one I really want to see. I wish I knew where he was so I could try to go there. I have no idea how he's going to find out about me. Gran and Gramps don't have his phone number. They don't carry cell phones, so he can't call them. And I don't know how he would even know to call them. The people who would normally pass along pertinent information that something has happened to me are in no position to do that. I stand over the bleeping tube, lifeless from that is me. My skin is gray. My eyes are taped shut. I wish someone would take the tape off. It looks like it itches. The nice nurse bustles over. Her scrubs have lollipops on them, even though this isn't pediatric unit. How it's going, sweetheart? She asked me as if we just bumped into each other in the grocery store. I didn't start out so smoothly with Adam and me. I think I had this notion that love conquers all, and by the time he dropped me off from Yo-Yo Ma concert, I think we were both aware that we were falling in love. I thought that getting to this part was a challenge. In books and movies, the stories always end when two people finally have their romantic kiss. The happily ever after part is just assumed. I didn't quite, it didn't quite work that way for us. It turned out that coming from such far corners of the social universe had its downsides. We continued to see each other in the music wing, but these interactions remained platonic, as if neither one of us wanted to mess with a good thing. But whenever we met at other places in school, when we sat together in cafeteria or studied side by side on the quad on the sunny day, something was off. We were uncomfortable. Conversation was still stilted. One of us would say something and the other would start to say something else at the same time. You go, I would say. No, you go, Adam would say. The politeness was painful. I wanted to push through it, to return to the glow of night of the concert, but I was unsure of how to get back there. Adam invited me to see his band play. This was even worse than school. If I felt like fish out of water in my family, I felt like a fish on Mars in Adam's circle. He was always surrounded by funky, lively people, by cute girls with dyed hair and piercings, by aloof guys who perked up when Adam rock talked with them. I couldn't do the groupie thing, and I didn't know how to rock talk at all. It was a language I should have understood, being both musician and dad's daughter, but I didn't. It was like how Mandarin speakers can sort of understand Cantonese, but not really, even though non Chinese people assume all Chinese can communicate with one another, even though Mandarin and Cantonese are actually different. I dreaded going to shows with Adam. It wasn't that I was jealous or that I wasn't into his kind of music. I loved to watch him play. When he was on stage, it was like a guitar was fifth limb and natural extensions of his body. And when he came off stage afterwards, he would be sweaty, but it was such a clean sweat that that part of me was tempted to lick the side of his face like it was a lollipop. I didn't know. Once the fan would descend, I would skitter off to the sidelines. Adam would try to draw me back to wrap and around my waist, but I would disentangle myself and head back to the shadows. Don't you like me anymore? Adam chided me after one show. He was kidding, but I could hear the hurt behind the offhand question. I don't know if I should keep coming to your shows, I said. Why not? He asked. This time he didn't try to disguise the hurt. I feel like I keep you from basking in it all. I don't want you to have worry about me. Adam said that he didn't mind worrying about me, but I could tell that part of him did. We probably would have broken up in those early weeks, were it not for my house. At my house, with my family, we found a common ground. After we had been worked together for a month, I took Adam home with me for his first family dinner with us. He sat in the kitchen with Dad, rock talking. I observed, and I still didn't understand half of it. But unlike the shows, I didn't feel left out. Do you play basketball? Dad asked when it came to observing sports. Dad was a baseball fanatic, but when it came to playing, he loved to shoot hops. Sure, Adam said. I mean, I'm not very good. You don't need to be good, you just need to be committed. Want to play a quick game? You already have your basketball shoes on, Dad said, looking at Adam's Converse high tops. Then he turned to me. You mind? Not at all, I said, smiling. I can practice while you play. They went out to the courts behind the nearby elementary school. They returned 45 minutes later. Adam was covered with sheen of sweat and looking a little dazed. What happened? I asked. Did the old man whoop you? Adam shook his head and nodded at the same time. Well, yes, but it's not that I got stung by a bee on my palm while we were playing. Your dad grabbed my hand and sucked the venom out. I nodded. This was trick he had learned from Gran, and unlike with rattlesnakes, it actually worked on bee stings. You got the stinger and the venom out, so you were left only with a little itch. Adam broke into an embarrassed smile. He leaned in and whispered into my ear, I think I'm a little wigged out. I've been more intimate with your dad than I have with you. I laughed at that, but it was sort of true. In the few weeks we had been together, we hadn't done much more than kiss. It wasn't that I was a prude, I was a virgin, but I certainly wasn't devoted to staying that way. And Adam certainly wasn't a virgin. It was more than our kissing had suffered from the same painful politeness as our conversations. Maybe we should remedy that, I murmured. Adam raised his eyebrow, as if asking me a question. I blushed in response. All through dinner, we grinned at each other as we listened to Teddy, who was chattering about the dinosaur bones they apparently dug up in back garden that afternoon. Dad had made his famous salt roast, which was my favorite dish, but I had no appetite. I pushed the food around my plate, hoping no one would notice. All this while, this little buzz was building inside me. I thought of turning fork I used to adjust my cello. Hitting it sets of vibrations in the note of A, vibration that keep growing and growing until the harmonic pitch fills up the room. That's what Adam Screen was doing to me during dinner. After that meal, Adam took a quick peek at Teddy's fossil finds, and then we went upstairs to my room and closed the door. Kim is not allowed to be alone in her house with boys. Not that the opportunity ever came up. My parents had never mentioned any rules on this issue, but I had a feeling that they knew what was happening with Adam and me. And even though Dad liked to play it all, Father knows best. In reality, he and Mom's were sucks when it came to love. Adam lay down on my bed, stretching his arm above his head. His whole face was grinning, eyes, nose, mouth Play me, he said. What? I want you to play me like a cello. I started to protest that this made no sense, but then I realized it made perfect sense. I went to my closet and grabbed one of my spare bows. Take off your shirt, I said, my voice quavering. Adam did. As thin as he was surprisingly built. I could have spent 20 minutes staring at the contours and valleys of his chest, but he wanted me closer. I wanted me closer. I sat next down to him on the bed, so long his body was stretched out in front of me. The bow trembled as I placed it on the bed. I reached with my left hand and kissed Adam's head as it was full of my cello. He smiled again and closed his eyes. I relaxed a little. I fiddled with his ears as though they were the string specks and then playful tickled him as he laughed softly. I placed two fingers on Adam's apples. Like deep breath for courage, I plunged into his chest. I ran my hands up and down length of his torso, focusing on his muscles, assigning each one a string, A, G, C, D. I traced them down one at a time with tip of my fingers. Adam got quiet then. It was if he were concentrating on something. I researched for the bow and brushed it across his hips. When I imagined the bridge of the cello would be, I played lightly at first, then more force, and song now playing in my hand increased intensity. When I finished, he stood up and kissed me long and deep. My turn, he said. He pulled me to my feet and started by slipping the sweater over my head and edging down. Then he sat down on the bed and laid me across his lap. At first, Adam did nothing except hold me. I closed my eyes and tried to feel his eyes on my body, seeing as no one else ever had. I opened my eyes, savoring the warm calm that was sweeping over me. I started to laugh. Adam did too, because for a while longer, until it was time for him to go home. As I walked him out to his car, I wanted to tell him that I loved him, but it seemed like a glitch after just done. So I waited and told him the next day. That's a relief. After that, we still had our problems, but being overly polite with each other wasn't one of them.